Imagine you are one of the first human beings on earth and you are walking with your kid, and suddenly you see a tiger. You don't know what a tiger is, so you take your kid over and start to play with him, and the tiger eats your kid. You go back home and you are sad, and in 3 years you are walking again with your new kid. Now you see a tiger far away. This time you hide with your kid and the tiger eventually leaves, and at last you both survive. You finally come out and start walking with your kid again, and suddenly a bird flies over your kid, and all of a sudden your kid drops dead. You go home sad and crying, really miserable. After some time your wife gets pregnant again, and you make a promise to yourself. You are going to make sure that you hide your kid from tiger, and that you will hide him if you see a bird flying over. So there are two ways that we think. Both of the decisions that you made are based on the fast automatic thought process, which a writer calls System 1. System 2 is where we find how irrational or just simply how stupid we really are. So sometimes we may think that System 1 is useless. If you had used your slow, more rational and logical thinking of System 2, you would have found that you are right about the tiger, but the bird had nothing to do with your kid's death. But still, System 1 does have its value. Maybe it has some flaws, like some really ridiculous assumptions, like your kid dying every time a bird flies over. But if we had rationally thought about what a loud noise might mean and analyze it carefully instead of being scared and running away from it immediately, sooner or later the man and the kid would become tiger's lunch and breakfast. So the main point is that the System 1 and System 2 both are important to us. Both systems have a lot of payback for us. The problem, however, starts when we use System 1 instead of System 2, when System 2 would be appropriate system to be used. This leads us to all kinds of misconceptions that are not most favorable. It's not optimal to think that if a bird flies over, your kid will drop dead. So one of the most amazing things that I really appreciate about my life is the peace of mind while I'm doing something. When I visit somewhere, I am not worried about a terrorist attack, and when I fly there, I am not worried about the plane crashing. And that peace of mind largely comes from the fact that I am not a really big consumer of mainstream media, TV channels or newspapers. But I constantly meet people who are really persistently worried. Have you seen how terrorism is taking over the world? Have you seen how planes are just crashing all the time now? But in reality, the probability of those two things happening to you has not risen in some dramatic proportion. They are highly unlikely to happen, and I mean a probability very close to zero that your plane will crash. And this is what is known as the science of availability. Even an event that has an almost non-existent probability of happening to you can be assigned a reasonable or even a high probability by you just because of what's available to you. So again, ask yourself, how can you use this concept to make your life better? Is it better to enjoy your life and realize that the world is actually not as bad as commonly portrayed? Or watch the news every day where you will be shown constant death and destruction because that's what sells? Idea number 1 is understanding the science of availability. Now let's say I offer you to play a game with me. We are going to flip a coin, and if you win $500, and if you lose a $500. Do you want to play this game? If you are like most people, that is a game that you do not want to play. What if we change the rules a little bit? If you win $550, and if you lose, you only lose a $500. What I expected that it is a good game to play. But if I asked you to play this game right now, and you know there is a 50% chance of losing your $500, if you are like most people, you still wouldn't play, even though there is a 50% chance of winning $550. This is called loss aversion. Most people are very loss averse. In fact, you have to offer somewhere about $2,000 to get people to play. Now this might be interesting, but again, ask yourself, how can you use this perception in your life? You are going to be more realistic explaining to someone what they are risking losing instead of what they could possibly gain. Idea number 2 is understanding loss aversion. Now imagine I'm your doctor and I have to do an operation on you, and I tell you that there is a 5% chance that you are going to die. I could also tell you that there is a 95% chance that you are going to survive. Now from a statistical point of view, there is absolutely no difference in those two statements. But in the first case, you are going to feel much worse than in the second. This is known as framing. How you frame the exact same situation can have dramatically different consequences. So idea number 3 is understanding framing. Again, ask yourself, how can you use framing to make good things more appealing and convincing to your friends or your children or whoever else you want to influence? And finally, the big idea 4 is understanding the sunk cost fallacy. This is all about letting your past decisions influence your present decisions. Let me give you an example. Alexa bought 20 boxes of candy a few months ago. So her house is full of candy, but she now finds out that candy is actually bad for her health, but she can't just get rid of it. She paid money for it at some point, so it's really very hard for her even though the candy is going to hurt her. Now you might look at an Alexa and say, hey, what a bunch of idiots, but the reality is that you and I are no different at all. How much stupid shit have you ever bought over the years that's now just lying there, taking up space, bothering you? You are never ever going to use it again, but you don't get rid of it. There is no difference between Alexa or Albert or you in this situation. That is what is known as sunk cost fallacy. Your past decisions shouldn't affect what is good for you now. If you paid money for a bunch of candy at some point in time, it doesn't mean that it's good for you to keep eating it. If you like this video, do not forget to subscribe and give this video a big like.